Highland Lawn Cemetery has been called one of Indiana's spookiest cemeteries. It opened in 1884 and spans nearly 140 acres. It's a lovely place to visit during the day, but things change at night. As you enter the cemetery, you'll pass the bell tower, which was the original office. The current office was built in 1909 as a waiting station for the interurban trolley system. Here, you can pick up a map to start your strange and spooky tour. Martin Sheets, 1853 to 1926. Martin Sheets was not so much afraid of death as he was afraid of being buried alive. This became an obsession. He imagined he could hear the doctor saying, "I'm sorry," as he pulled the sheet over Martin's head. He imagined he could feel himself lying in his coffin as the screws of the lid were slowly turned tight. He also imagined he could hear the sound of dirt thudding on the lid of his coffin, the last sound he would ever hear. Martin became so obsessed he decided to make sure it would never happen. First, he had a special coffin built, one that had interior latches that could be unlocked from inside. He had a massive mausoleum built for his coffin, so dirt would never be thrown on his lid. And to make sure he could get out of his tomb, he paid the telephone company a lot of money to install and maintain a phone inside the tomb. His instructions even provided for food to be left in the tomb on his burial day. Then, if he was buried alive, all he had to do was snap the special release latches, call someone to get him out, and enjoy a snack while he waited. When Martin Sheets died, he was buried according to his instructions in the mausoleum. A few years later, Martin's wife died. She was found lying on her bed with the phone gripped so tightly in her hand that the attendants had a hard time removing it. The funeral workers went to the tomb to prepare it for her burial. Inside, it was exactly as it had been left after Martin Sheets' funeral, the last time it was opened. Except for one thing, the phone was off the hook. Claude Herbert, 1880 to 1898. 18-year-old Claude Herbert, Spanish-American war veteran, was at his job as a store Santa Claus at the Havens and Geddes department store, downtown Terre Haute, a few days before Christmas, 1898. When a devastating fire broke out, Claude heroically saved several children as well as several others before losing his own life in the fire. 3 days later, amid the smoldering ruins of a tragedy that destroyed 4 lives and $2 million in property over a city block, searchers found 2 of Herbert's bones in a location that led investigators to speculate he was on the 5th floor. Otherwise, Herbert was cremated by the blaze. His remains are interred in the family mausoleum. Come to the cemetery on a December night and listen for the sound of sleigh bells. Perhaps you'll be visited by the ghost of Christmas past. Veleska Sarat, 1882 to 1962. Star of the Broadway stage and silent movies, Veleska Sarat was one of the most famous vamps, short for vampire, of New York and Hollywood. She was the first vaudeville star to sign a motion picture contract. She also dressed every bit the part of the big-time screen vamp she became, earning the nickname the Empress of Shopping due to her eccentric, extravagant taste. She also became a screenwriter and a biblical scholar. She sued Cecil B. DeMille when he adapted parts of one of her screenplays and was blacklisted when the case was settled in 1930. Veleska disappeared and was found years later living as a hermit in a small New York hotel. She died in a nursing home in Washington, D.C. on July 2, 1962. Her ashes are buried next to her mother's tombstone. She has no stone of her own. Look for the stone marked Anna Sarat, 1847 to 1914, in section 14 on your map. If you're searching for this vampire's final resting place, Maybe you should consider bringing along your garlic necklace. John Robert Craig, 1877 to 1931. This traveling salesman was celebrating the coming New Year at a prominent hotel in Indianapolis with his lover. While in bed with the other woman, he suffered a heart attack and died. The lover fled the scene. When his wife was informed of the circumstances surrounding his death, she vowed that he had made his bed, now he'll lie in it. She had a special tombstone built just for him. It resembles a bed, so it will remind everyone just how he died. Here he lies, for all to see, on his side of the bed, alone. Gypsys, 1914 murders. Dmitro John, a 55-year-old gypsy chief, shot and killed his father-in-law Bob Riska, his brother-in-law Joe Riska, and his common-law wife Soka Riska John. Dmitro was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. However, he only served 3 years and was pardoned by the governor of Indiana. The funeral was presided over by the head of the International Tribe of Gypsies. An account of the funeral in the Terre Haute Tribune described the funeral scene at the cemetery. Members of the Gypsy tribe placed strange balls of incense around the graves, and the coffins were lowered through the rising smoke. After the coffins were in the ground and covered, bottles of wine were broken, and the liquid was poured on the graves in the form of a cross. Members of Gypsy tribes still visit these graves on a regular basis to honor the dead. But are they at rest? Local legends tell of gypsy ghosts that haunt the cemetery, and you would be advised to have your spells and charms ready, just in case. The cemetery's chapel, built in 1893, is of the Richardsonian Romanesque style. It was designed by architect Jesse A. Vrydal and cost $10,000 to complete. It is located on the highest hill in the cemetery. The chapel features gabled roofs, a domed brick basement, and stained glass throughout. It was renovated in 1988 at the cost of $65,000. Is it haunted? Looks like it should be. Come to the cemetery at night and see for yourself. Rose Orphans Grave. The Chauncey Rose Orphans Home, which was built with funds left by Chauncey Rose, opened on September 4, 1884. As a major contributor to the development and betterment of a city that Rose strongly believed in, the home was built to house children left without parents to raise and guide them. The home purchased a tract of land in the new Highland Lawn Cemetery to bury those children that died early in life. In the span of the 60-plus years that the home was in operation, only 12 deaths occurred at the home, some to illness, but more to accidents. 7 of these children were buried here in Highland Lawn Cemetery. The grave was unmarked for decades. Some say that unmarked graves are haunted. Now that there's a marker here, let's hope they can rest in peace. Allen Pence, 1819 to 1908. Dr. Allen Pence was a physician, druggist, and spiritualist. He donated the use of the second-floor hall in his building at 2nd and Ohio Streets to the local Spiritualist Society. They believed that the spirit lives on after death and is able to communicate with the living through mediums. Mrs. Anna Stewart, a renowned medium, gave her first seance in Pence's Hall in 1873. At the time, Terre Haute was a hot spot for spiritualism, and Pence Hall was frequented by a host of spirits, apparitions, and ghosts. Dr. Pence was a firm believer in the ability to communicate with the dearly departed. If you'd like to communicate with Dr. Pence, his small, flat tombstone can be found in Section 3 on your map, west of the Sheets Mausoleum. Locate the Crapo stones next to the road and go north, if you dare. John Heinel, 1844 to 1920, the legend of Stiffy Green. He had been the family dog, friendly yet fiercely protective of his master, John Heinel. He would sit on the front porch, just outside the door, waiting for his master to come home from work. When Mr. Heinel died, the bulldog was heartbroken. He kept running away, and the family would find him sitting outside the door of the tomb, guarding it and waiting for his master. Eventually, they found the bulldog lying dead on the steps of the mausoleum. He was stuffed, his eyes replaced with glass, and placed inside the tomb next to the master that he had loved so much. If you went to the cemetery at night, you might hear the haunting howl of Stiffy Green as he pined away for his master. If you were brave enough to shine a light in the door of the mausoleum, Stiffy's cold green eyes would glow, and he'd growl at you as he guarded his master's tomb. Even though Stiffy Green was moved to the Historical Museum after the mausoleum was vandalized, visitors to the cemetery continue to experience his haunting presence. Now, as you know, legends are stories that are one part fact and one part fiction. Was Stiffy Green ever a real dog? That's for you to decide. But his haunted legend lives on.